What do you know? Carolina ends up adding someone to the roster after all, just 5 days before classes start.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Friday, August 16th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host today, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you so much for making us your first listen or watch of the day. Special shout out to all the everydayers out there and to all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family. So glad that all of you are here. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. In the dog days of summer, the sport stopped sportsing like we wanted to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, y'all, it's going to be a fun show wrapping up the week here on Locked On Tar Heels. Tyzhaun Claude commits to Carolina. We've got some other recruiting news, a couple official visits scheduled to Carolina and other places. Drake Maye got his first NFL TD, albeit in the preseason. And while football may be 2 weeks away, there is already Tar Heel fall sports action underway. We'll get you going on all of that, but let's start with the biggest news of the last couple of days. Tyzhaun Claude, the Georgia Tech transfer, commits to North Carolina. Now, if you've been with us all week, you heard Hubert Davis and myself discuss Tyzhaun Claude on Monday's show as a possibility because we had learned the news that Carolina had made contact with Claude. And so we talked about him in depth. We'll do so a little bit more today, but you can even find more detail about him and his game on Monday's show. Go back and check that out. So Claude committed to Carolina 2 days ago on Wednesday, August 14th. You may or may not be aware that classes start this upcoming Monday, August 19th. That means from the day he committed, it's 5 days till classes start. That's wild and bonkers. Welcome to the transfer portal era. It's a crazy time to be alive. But here's the deal. While, yes, Carolina has pursued and missed on or pursued and backed off of a whole bunch of different front court players this year and finally land one, and it's just the truth. You never know when or where or how a player's going to come to you. Is Claude a player of Cliff O'Maury's capability or Jonas Aidoo's capability or any of the other, kind of bigger name front court players Carolina went after? He's not. Absolutely, he's not. But he is a player that can add help to North Carolina this season. So here's kind of the situation. Claude actually entered the transfer portal out of Georgia Tech back on April 1st. Not a fool, not a trick. He really did that. But the reason he's just been sitting, hanging out, not committed anywhere is that he needed a waiver to be eligible for this year because this is actually going to be his 6th year in college. Joe Tipton reported that last Wednesday, August 7th, Claude's agent, Corey Markham, reported the news that he had, in fact, received that waiver and would be able to play this year. Fast forward a week, and he commits to the Tar Heels. So a little bit more about Tyzhaun Claude. I said that this will be his 6th year of college. It will also be his 4th school. He spent his first 3 years at Morehead State. The thing is, he really only played there a lot in his freshman year, 2019-20. He missed the entire next season, 2020-21, with an injury, and then was able to redshirt because of that. Only played 9 games the next season in 21-22, his redshirt sophomore year. Then after that, transferred to Western Carolina, where he had his best statistical year of his college career. We'll talk about those numbers in just a second. And then last year, transferred to Georgia Tech to get that ACC experience. And that's now where he comes to Carolina from. Oh, by the way, having beaten Carolina and played quite well against them, unfortunately, last season. In that 2022-23 year at Western Carolina was third team All-Southern Conference. Of note, Tyzhaun Claude is from Goldsboro, North Carolina. So another boy, young man coming home, and that is going to be a good thing. Same Cade Tyson, North Carolina kid. It's part of this transfer portal era. So what's interesting with Claude is that Carolina now has 3 players utilizing COVID eligibility, along with RJ Davis and Jalen Withers. You got to get old, you got to stay old. And while he might not be high up on the depth chart, we'll talk about that in a little bit, he is somebody who brings experience and brings ACC experience. And that is a good thing, even if, his best thing he does this year is be a phenomenal practice player. He's going to be more than that, but that is a great piece of news. So what is his game? Well, the biggest single best attribute in terms of basketball that Tyzhaun Claude is going to bring to the Tar Heels is rebounding. For example, we often think about Armando Bacot as a phenomenal rebounder, and we should, because he's the all-time leading rebounder at North Carolina. Last year, Armando Bacot, his offensive rebounding percentage was 11.3. Tyzhaun Claude's 15.7. He had a higher offensive rebounding percentage last year at Georgia Tech than Armando Bacot did at North Carolina, albeit in fewer minutes than Armando. Let's recognize that. And not always against as high-level talent as Carolina was playing. So that's all a reality as well. Now, also to be fair, Armando's defensive rebounding percentage and overall rebounding percentage were higher. I just want to point out that Claude is holding his own with one of the best rebounders in the nation and one of the best rebounders in Carolina history from a counting statistic. In fact, as you go into KenPom and look at the deeper data on his offensive rebounding, nationally, Tyzhaun Claude was 10th in offensive rebounding percentage last year. That's all of D1 we're talking about right there, all 360 plus teams. And he was 6th in offensive rebounding percentage among power conference players. And he was the shortest among that top 10. And oh, by the way, his offensive rebounding percentage led the ACC. And here's a telling stat. His offensive rebounding percentage went up in conference-only games to 16%. He was also first in the conference in conference-only games in offensive rebounding percentage. So that's really good news for Carolina, who loses Armando Bacot's rebounding, who loses Harrison Ingram's rebounding, and is going to need help on the glass. Tyzhaun Claude can do exactly that. And what I like as I watch some of Georgia Tech's games from last year, as I watch some of his highlights, a lot of his offensive rebounds lead directly to putbacks. And that's where he is going to be able to get, hopefully some production for Carolina. Because let's be honest, if and when he's in the game, they're not going to be running plays for him. So if he can make his own hay at and around the rim with offensive rebounds and putbacks, man, that's huge for Carolina. Also, if Carolina plays the way we expect them to this year with a lot of 5-out, a lot of small ball, then he's going to be utilized in a lot of pick and roll action as like a small ball 5, maybe out in the corner, crashing down to the rim, things like that. And that's where he can play well for the Tar Heels. And so there is potential for him to have a good impact. Statistically, for his career, 9.3 points a game, 6.3 rebounds, 53.9% from the field. Last year at Georgia Tech, as you would imagine, those numbers were lower than his career average. 4.8 points, 5.2 rebounds, 49.5% from the field. But his breakout year that I talked about at Western Carolina, this is when things were really high. 15.4 points a game, 8.6 rebounds, shot 52.3% from the field. In that win against Carolina last year, his numbers were 9 points. He was 4 of 8 from the field. He was 1 of 1 from the free throw line, had 8 rebounds and 3 blocks against the Tar Heels. You probably remember that. Now, a lot of that was, if you remember, Baye Ndongo went out early in the game with an injury, never came back. And so Claude was the beneficiary of that. So all that to say, he can do some things. He's not going to play a ton, but he is a helpful piece for Carolina. What exactly does his commitment mean? What sort of role do I expect him to play? That's what I want to talk about next, along with updating you on a couple of official visits that have been scheduled to North Carolina. But first, I want to tell you about FanDuel. I love sports so much, and I never want them to stop. But in the dog days of summer, we just get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. Come on, football season, it's almost here. But the good news is, for these last 2 weeks till we get that, FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you got to do is open up the app when you're in the mood and dream up bets. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. For example, we're looking ahead to the football season. Carolina's win total at FanDuel is set at 7.5. You could pick over or under. That's an easy line to go after. Man, would love to see Carolina hit the over on that. If you want to get in on that action, head on over to FanDuel.com to start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. You know we can't talk recruiting on this show and a commitment without me pulling up the world famous Shady Scholarship chart. That's what we got coming at you if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to the show, you can pull up the scholarship chart on my Twitter feed or on the Locked On Tar Heels Instagram account as well. I posted it to all those places. For those of you who might be new to the show, I just keep a chart that keeps tabs on all of Carolina's scholarship availability. As a reminder, right now in college basketball, or in men's college basketball, I should specify, you get 13 full scholarships. It sounds like we're going to go up to 15 next season. That's kind of pending. We're waiting on confirmation of that. But right now, it stays at the 13. So what it shows for those of you watching, and I'll explain it for those of you listening, is who all is on Carolina's roster right now, what class they're in, and then how much eligibility they have. So you can see how many scholarships are utilized and taken for the upcoming seasons. So Claude is the 12th scholarship for Carolina this year, meaning they have one open. We're expecting that Coach Davis will give that one to one of the walk-on players to reward all their hard work. And then for those of you watching or looking at it on social media, you can see the scholarship allotment for the next 3 seasons as well. First off, let's just talk here as we're thinking about what Claude's commitment means for him and for Carolina. As you look at the chart, one of the things you got to realize is that this is a low risk, who knows what sort of reward investment. Part of that is because Claude just has this 1 year of eligibility remaining. So it affects nothing with recruiting either at the high school ranks or in the transfer portal for the upcoming seasons. And so it is a nice insurance policy. Why wouldn't you go after that? Because at worst, as I said earlier, he's a helpful practice player. At best, he mixes really well with some of the guards and turns into a productive player for Carolina this season. The reality, let's be honest, is probably somewhere in between, but you just don't know. So why not take a shot on this? It's worth it. Minutes roll. I do not expect Tyzhaun Claude to be a starter. But guess what? Neither does he. He knows what he's coming into, similar to James Okonkwo last year. Carolina needs more bodies, simply put, in the front court. As I said a second ago, as insurance policies, you don't know how injuries will affect things. Fingers crossed, knocked on wood, whatever you want to do. That's okay. Now, while I don't expect him to be a starter, I also don't expect him to play the James Okonkwo role last year. Okonkwo simply just played mop-up duty, 2.9 minutes per game for the season. That was the lowest minutes per game of any of the scholarship players last year. I would expect Claude's playing time to be somewhere in between starter and Okonkwo, closer to Okonkwo. I'm going to guess around 5 minutes a game as we think about that. Now, here's the thing. We're talking about it all offseason. The backcourt is loaded for Carolina. Riley and Sleepers Media just recently named Carolina's backcourt the second best in the country, for example. And so, anybody that's looking at this, talking about it, ranking backcourts is going to put Carolina top 5. You just have to, even if just thinking about RJ Davis as a potential national player of the year. But you add in sophomore Elliot Cadeau, you add in Seth Trimble coming back for his junior year, you add in everything that Ian Jackson's going to bring. And then it also depends on if they're counting wings like Drake Powell and Cade Tyson. But when you look at those 6, you feel pretty confident and comfortable with what they're going to bring to the table. The bigger question is the front court. It's a work in progress and something that we won't fully have answers to until the season is up and running. And even then, we might not fully see the rotation settled in until December, maybe even January, as we get into the fullness of ACC play. You got to imagine that Coach Davis and the staff's going to tinker a good bit to see how all these pieces fit best together. Please, all of us, I'm preaching to myself as I say this. Isaac, listen to what you're saying right now. Be patient as they figure it out. But here are the 6 players we expect to get time in, or that are front court players, keeping in mind that Cade, Tyson, Drake, Powell could be utilized as small ball 4s as well. But those 6 players, Jalen Washington, Jalen Withers, Zayden High, Ven-Allen Lubin, Tyzhaun Claude, and James Brown. As I look at those 6, I do believe that Claude will be ahead of James Brown on the front court depth chart. I don't believe right now that he would be ahead of anyone else on the front court depth chart. It just is what it is. Now, he could play his way into that, and that would be awesome and incredible, but I'm just not seeing that right now. All right? Makes sense? Cool. Great. So Tyzhaun Claude is going to come in. He's going to work hard. He's going to bang in the post. He's going to, give it to Jalen Washington and Jalen Withers and Zayden and Ven-Allen and James Brown. And that's good and helpful. You need more bodies. But I love that you're able to bring in somebody like this that's not necessarily expecting 20 minutes a game. And that is a good thing. And again, that experience is going to be so valuable for Hubert Davis's club. Now, we're talking about somebody that's committing for 5 days from now for this year, but we got to keep looking ahead as well. Well, Dybantsa, Eric Reibe, 2 of the dudes in the class of 25 that we're looking at have scheduled official visits to Carolina, and they're coming at the same time. We'll talk about that and some football news all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time. Going to MLB games in the summer is one of my favorite all-time things to do. The game, the food, the friends, everything that's part of the experience to make up that atmosphere. And I'm excited to make those kind of all new memories again this summer. And thankfully, when I want to go do that, I don't have to sweat last minute high price tickets, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And part of the great news is that with Game Time, prices on the app actually go down the closer it gets to game time. So with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying your tickets. Baseball, but let's think about Carolina football. Less now than 2 weeks away. Carolina at Minnesota, tickets as cheap as $36, but you could sit in the end zone in row 2 for just $67, or right behind the Carolina bench for $80. Hop on that right now, drive up to Minnesota and support the Tar Heels. And take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Got a whole bunch of odds and ends for you here to wrap up the show and wrap up the week today. It's like a Friday news dump coming at you. Let's start with basketball recruiting. Dybantsa, the #1 player in all of high school basketball, but his class of 2025 going to be a senior this year. We talked about it, I think it was last week on the show, that he has cut his list down to 7. That list is Auburn, Alabama, Baylor, BYU, Kansas, Kansas State, and North Carolina. Dybantsa has already taken an official visit to Auburn. And so now he has scheduled official visits with all of the other 6. The reason for that is you can only take an official visit to a school once unless there is a coaching change, but you can take as many unofficial visits you want. So Dybantsa might go back to Auburn, but he's already taken his official visit. Let me give you these other 6 chronologically. Kansas State, August 30th through September 1st. Kansas, September 6th through 8th. North Carolina, September 20th through 22nd. Alabama, September 27th through 29th. Baylor, October 4th through 6th, and BYU, October 11th through 13th. So Carolina is like smack dab in the middle of that. Now, press pause on Dybantsa. Eric Reibe, one of the big dudes in the class of 25 that Carolina is going after. Somebody I said I actually kind of liked a little bit more than Malachi Moreno. We're actually going to talk about him in just a second. But Reibe has also scheduled 6 visits, and Carolina gets one of those. Let me give them to you similarly chronologically. Kansas, August 29th through 31st. UConn, September 6th through 8th. Kentucky, September 13th through 15th. North Carolina, September 20th through 22nd. Indiana, October 4th through 6th. And Oregon, October 11th through 13th. Now, what you notice with both these guys, Dybantsa and Reibe, both coming to Carolina the same weekend, September 20th through 22nd. It's when the football team is playing James Madison. Coach Brown and company, you guys got to win that football game, please, and thank you very much, because that's a big part of it. Cannot lose that one. Now, look, it's pretty early with both these guys in their recruitment. I mean, there's like legitimate BYU noise for AJ Dybantsa, but getting them on campus and getting them on campus at the same time cannot hurt. Who knows where Carolina will ultimately land with either or both of them, but you got to make a good impression with your visit to have a shot at them. Getting these visits is a big deal, even if they don't end up coming to Carolina, right? Like, you just want to keep being there in the front of people's minds and seeing what might come of it. And so would love to have both of these dudes. Honestly, I don't know that we will land them, but we'll keep an eye on it. As a reminder, the difference, we talked official and unofficial visits there. Official visit, the school pays. Unofficial visit, the family pays. There's other minutia with it, but that's kind of the big ticket difference between the two. Both of these are official visits. Official visits used to be limited to 5 schools. Now it's unlimited. You can go to as many as you want. I mentioned Malachi Moreno. He's a player who is committing today, Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. So it might have already happened by the time you're listening to or watching this on the 247 Sports YouTube page. He's got a final 8 of Arkansas, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisville, Carolina, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. All signs are pointing that he's going to commit to Kentucky, but I just want to make you aware of it in case there's some kind of random last-minute thing that happens. I'm not expecting it, but hey, we'll see. All right, let's switch attention to football now, which, again, it's crazy to think that 2 weeks from today, we're going to be breaking down Carolina's first game at Minnesota. It's 13 days from now. I cannot wrap my head around that, but I'm so excited for it. The AP poll, the first AP poll of the year, the preseason, came out earlier this week, and Carolina was not in the top 25. Carolina was also not in the others receiving votes. Nowhere to be found in either one of them. I was not shocked at all about not being in the top 25. I did think that even with losing Drake Maye, Carolina would at least get a couple votes. But I think the media looks at that and they say, Carolina's going to fall off because Drake Maye's gone and they were nothing without him. I don't think they get it. I don't think they see and hear some of the reports from camp that you and I are hearing and seeing. I'm cautiously optimistic. It's a dangerous game to play. I know, but I am. And so, fine. Don't give us any votes. Let's go prove something, right? There are 5 other teams from the ACC that are ranked, well, 4 and Notre Dame. You know, they're kind of ACC in football. Notre Dame ranked 7th, Florida State 10, Clemson 14, Miami 19, and NC State 24. Good grief. I want to beat NC State this year. I'm so tired of losing to them in football. It's killing me. 3 ACC teams also in others receiving votes. Louisville at 26, Virginia Tech at 27, and newcomer SMU at 29. So there you go, the initial AP rankings. 4 ACC teams and Notre Dame ranked. 3 ACC teams in others receiving votes. Let's go out and prove it. It's got to start at Minnesota, though. Pretty cool news for Omarion Hampton, who a lot of Tar Heels keep racking up some accolades, but ESPN has named Hampton to their preseason All-America team. Way to go, Omarion. Now go run wild, my dude. Can't wait to see that. Speaking of Carolina football and not having Drake Maye anymore, it's because he's a Patriot now, and he got some kind of more real action and extended time on Thursday night in their preseason game. And it was cool to see Drake get his first NFL TD, albeit a preseason touchdown. Did you watch the footage of that? Looked very, very familiar to me, like something that we saw over and over again at Carolina. Drake had some good moments. He had some not as good moments. He's going to learn and he's going to keep growing, man. But he had some nice balls, some good decision-making. I thought left the pocket early a time or two, but he's going to grow in that awareness and trust with his team. So really interested to see how Drake continues to compete for a job. A quote from Coach Mayo of the Patriots, who said, if Drake's better than Jacoby, being Jacoby Brissett, excuse me, I'm putting the emphasis in the wrong spot there. Let me say it again. If Drake's better than Jacoby, good grief, then he'll play. He'll start, end quote. So, I mean, he's in that mix. Clearly, he wouldn't be saying that if he wasn't thinking about it. Also, I mentioned that, while it's 2 weeks away for Carolina football, we are getting Tar Heel action already. The women's soccer team played their first regular season game on Thursday night, the first game of the post-Anson Dorrance era. My head is still spinning from that news, but good news from the ladies. They go to Denver and win 2-1, winning goal from Bella Sember in the second half. It was a pretty crazy play, but a great job. Just a couple minutes removed from Denver scoring on a penalty kick. So nice resolve to just fight immediately back, get the W, come on home. Way to start the season. Ladies, good stuff there. All right, y'all, that's it for this week on Locked On Tar Heels. If you haven't subscribed to the show on video and audio, please make sure you go ahead and do that. Super easy. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we would love to have you there. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the community. It's free to join. Locked On Tar Heels Discord. Links in the show notes. Would love to have you there. Want to remind you, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again on Monday, but until then, I hope you have a great weekend. Peace.